Hello, acolytes. This is Rodney Anonymous, as you can probably tell from the silly, thick Philadelphia accent. I am one half of Seventh Victim, making a little video because Janet and I are working on the new Seventh Victim album. Hopefully it should be done maybe by the end of the summer. Who knows? But we're working on it, and I've always wanted to document a song from beginning to end, from the initial song idea all the way through taking it from my sketchpad area on my computer out to the hardware, working on the lyrics with Janet, and then having Janet sing it, and then having a finished product. It'll probably just be interesting for me. I've always just wanted to have that just for myself. It may be interesting to some of you musicians. I think it may be interesting to future musicians who can look at it and go, why did this idiot record it? Like, although present day musicians might look at it and go, there's so much easier ways to do this. You are a moron. So I'm looking at getting called a moron either in the present or in the future. I've been called a moron in the past, so it works out. It's a nice balance to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with my sketchpad area, going to open up FL Studio. Now, to be 100% above board, I have an endorsement with FL Studio. But I bought just about everything that FL Studio had before I got the endorsement. I basically just got the endorsement because I wanted to say, hey, look, I'm on a page. I thought it might impress somebody. Like if I get pulled over by the police, I can say, well, look, I'm on the FL Studio page. So I just wanted you folks to know I have the endorsement so you don't think I'm a 100% total sellout. When I open up FL Studio, I have it set up so that there are two templates I have. One is if I'm doing a Dead Milkmen song, I have a template that has drums, bass, like a regular bass, electric bass guitar sound, and synth sound. That's what I use for writing Milkmen songs. For writing Seventh Victim songs, I just have it so I have drum sounds, and I have a synth bass that is very close to my Volca synth bass. That comes in super handy. I've got an FM synth called Dext. And the reason I use that is because the synth sounds that I've created, my sort of homemade custom patches that I have on my FM synth, which I call the Ormsby, I have those here. So I can get kind of a preview of what something might sound like on the Ormsby, although the Ormsby has a lot of personality. Things don't always sound the same. And then the final synth I have is a synth called Scan Synth. Sadly, they don't make this anymore, but Scan Synth has a lot of great sounds. If you heard Hillbilly with a meat cleaver, that's Scan Synth. So the reason I just have 4 sounds, and I used to load up and experiment with a lot of sounds. I only have 4 sounds because I read an interview with MrKitty, with Forrest from MrKitty. And Forrest had said that he was doing remixes, and he basically has this template set up this way. He says, look, what do I need? I need a drum, I need a bass, I need a lead sound, and something for pads. And there was an epiphany there because I waste a lot of time inside these systems, inside with VSTs going, oh, wow, I wonder what this sound would be like. And by the time it's like 2, 3 in the morning and you haven't actually worked on any of the song. So just, creativity through limitations is what I say. Gary Numan, who you will learn something from every Gary Numan interview. Gary Numan once said that he had spent, I think it was like 36 hours without sleep looking for the perfect snare sound. He was just like, and unless you're looking for the snare from Bowie's Let's Dance, any snare will do. Nobody usually, it's the only standout snare out there where everybody goes, oh, that's snare. But it's just generally and you're just writing the song anyway. Just find a snare. A snare will do. We have hundreds of drum kits. Each drum kit has 4 or 5 snares associated with it. You will never get any sleep. You'll never get your song done. Just remember, creativity through limitations. Bring it on down, folks. Now, the song that I'm working on here called Indrid Cold. And just for a second, I just want to heavily recommend Google Indrid Cold. You'll be glad you did. The first thing I do is when I'm out, and this is usually, I jot down the title when I'm out. And I usually wind up jotting down those titles coming home from a night out in a club or seeing a band. That's where I get the ideas from. And I'll be home like, oh, I jot down the title. And then once I have the title, I go and I make a directory. And that means I have to do it. I consider it like a Roger Corman way of doing things. Roger Corman would come up with a title for a movie. I don't know, Kneecap Men from Planet Jupiter or something. And he would get all the funding for Kneecap Men from Planet Jupiter, and then he would have to make the movie because it got funded. So the way I look at it, if I go in and I make the directory, then I have to make the song. I have an idea, and then it depends on what day of the week it is, but I take a couple days building up to Sunday, and I'll just let the song, the idea percolate in my head, kind of how I want to get it to be. And the reason I do Sunday, and I won't go into this massively because I've talked about this before, but I will put a link in the comments section to what I'm about to talk about. And what I won't do is get a shot of me pointing down at the comments section, because I notice people do that. Oh, the links, and they have to point down as if we don't know where the comments section is. But there's a gentleman named Zug von Rock, and he is in a band called Angel Spit, and he is a genius. And he came up with this idea for something called church. And church works the way you have an idea and you let it percolate, and on Sunday, no social media. You lock the doors of your home studio, take a couple hours, and you work on the song. You cannot be disturbed. You brew some tea, no one can bother you, and that is church. So again, link in the comments, and you're going to want to watch that, and you will learn much from it. So I've got this idea for this song called Indrid Cold. So it gives me an idea of cold, sort of distance, dissident weirdness, and to me, that means diminished chords. Don't know if it means that same thing to you folks. I hear things differently, obviously. But to me, that's diminished chords. Now, all a diminished chord is a regular chord. It's got a flattened third in it and a flattened fifth, okay? So here, this is a regular C chord. And this is a C diminished chord. Now, for the chords for my song, I chose D diminished and A diminished. And I just chose them at random. There was no rhyme or reason. Just picked them out of a hat. And what I decided to do was that it wasn't going to work the way a lot of songwriting does, where the bass plays the root note, and then there's a pad that's playing all of the the entire chord, and then there's a lead in there that takes little bits of the chords and works them together. And what I decided to do was I would have the bass go in and play some of the notes from the chord. The pad would play some notes from it, and just generally kind of work it that way. Now, I start with songs in different ways. I always do kind of start with a title. Sometimes I'll start, though, with a riff. I have a riff in my head. Welcome to the End of the World, Milkman's song, began with a riff in my head. And also, at the same time, the title, my friend Donna Lynch saying, Welcome to the End of the World. So what happened was, in that case, I had a title and a riff. In this case, I had the title, and I had kind of an idea of how I wanted it to sound. There's dissonant chords, but I decided I was going to do something different. This is like the thing I do the least, was to start with a drum track. So I started playing around with drum tracks, came up with a couple. This is the first drum track that I came up with. And I wasn't crazy about that one, but I did like the hi-hat pattern in it. So I thought, well, maybe there's something from that I can use in the bass. I eventually played around with some drum tracks, and I came up with a hybrid track I was pretty happy with, and this is some of it. So now that I have my drum, I decided I wanted to move on to my bass sound. And I had that hi-hat pattern to kind of begin to work with. So I kind of copied that down in. I began playing with the notes that I wanted to use, moved them around a bit. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually play the notes in and then clean them up. I may have done that here, trying to remember. So what I did was I got that in there. It's just the notes from the chord, and this is what the bass pattern eventually that I decided on. And not a lot of work went into this, just because it's just a couple of notes, and you just want to keep it simple. This is what the bass pattern sounds like. Okay, now here are the drums and the bass together. Okay, now that I had that, I had an idea. So let's keep this, again, keeping it simple and keeping sort of within a motif that I tried on Her Name is Witch. What I did was I took the bass pattern, and I took my FM synth, and I played the bass pattern on that, just copied it over, moved it up 2 octaves, and I kind of used that as a chorus and a pre-chorus. But here, this is what that sounds like. Okay, now I went over to my super weird buddy, Scan Synth, which is the one you can't get anymore. But if you find somebody that can somehow get you a copy of it, get a copy of it. The thing is absolutely amazing. I was saddened when the company went out of business. It's really good, makes some really weird, unusual sounds, often great for pads. So I decided to do a pad. So this is the pad that really defines the verse. Okay, so now I have the drums and the bass, good, nice tight rhythm there, and I've got the that weird chorusy leady type thing that is just the bass double but doubled on the FM synth, and then I've got my pad that sort of defines the verse. So now I kind of know where I am in the song, and I decided, well, it can't just be that, so it needs a break. So the break is just a B minor, and there's a slight variation on the drum pattern, and this is what that sounds like. Okay, and this would be the entire song all stitched together, sort of as it is right now. Okay, thank you very much for being patient and listening to that. Going to work on part two. Part two, you're going to see how I get everything over to the hardware. It's like if you're in a band and you write a song and you say, okay, here's what's good. You know, write some simple drum parts, the bass part, whatever, and you know, it sounds one way when you write it on your DAW, but it sounds a different way when you take it and you give it to the band. So in a way, that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to give it to the band. I'm going to take it over, and it'll all go over onto the hardware. So in the exciting part two, there'll be you'll hear what it sounds like on hardware. I'll show you the bizarre method I use to take the hardware back into the synth. And by that point, you'll probably be asleep. It'll probably be way too dull for you. But I thank you all for sticking in this far.